Okay, so I apologize for being a few minutes late. I am having technical difficulties with getting a mic, so I apologize. I am live now. And I'm going to see if they can hear me. I will attempt to get closer to the camera so that you all who are watching on YouTube live would let me know, text me, let me know if you can hear me. That would be great. While I set up the PowerPoint. If anybody is out there on YouTube and you can hear me, let me know. I'm waiting for Eric to try and get me the mic, so I want to make sure that you all can hear. I apologize. It is one of the things that is interesting about living in this era where we have people that are participating that are not right in front of me. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Hopefully, you can join. I don't see anybody on. There is somebody on the extended classroom on WebEx. The WebEx says that they can hear me. YouTube, if anybody's on YouTube, can you hear me? Is it clear on YouTube? You just responded, let me know. All right, I'm gonna stand as close to this camera as I can so that you can hear me clearly. Just sort of as a recap of where we were, we started talking about the history of marketing and marketing theory, marketing philosophies, and how these correspond to various eras. And I told you, for example, that the production era goes from about the beginning of recorded history, what we know from the anthropological and archaeological record, until about 1920. But I gave you examples the other day of how there are big companies like Apple and Microsoft that still use this production philosophy. They don't really engage in what we might think of as necessarily good marketing research and in terms of gauging the consumer. Steve Jobs' attitude, for example, at Apple was very much, I'm going to tell you what's cool and you will buy it. And we have. We use this device a lot. And we used it in ways that I don't think Steve thought about us using it, which if he'd done marketing research, he would have found out. But they are still engaged in this production philosophy. And the reason that I stress this and I make this important is because although there is a temporal aspect to these, when we talk about history and when we talk about these things, it's important to understand that for many people, old ways and old philosophies of doing things still work. And this is an example of that. And so when you go to answer questions on an exam, it's important that you be able to identify, if you think only about the temporal aspects, the time period of these philosophies, and I give you an example, a substantive example, in a multiple choice question that says, Ben is starting a tech company. He believes that he is the social arbiter of what is cool and is going to start a social media market website for Smurfs or people who are in love with Smurfs, and he's going to make Smurfs cool. What philosophy is he using? And then I give you, lists of philosophies, and you're thinking to yourself, well, the production era stopped in 1920. Well, clearly he's using a production. I'm going to put what I want out there, and people are either going to buy it or they're not. Probably they're not going to buy it, and that may be problematic. It works well if you're Steve Jobs and you're brilliant, right? Doesn't work so well if you're other people. But we still see this hanging around. And so the other thing that I want to emphasize here is that often students tell me after my first exam that, first of all, they say things like, I always made A's in high school. I don't know why I didn't make an A in your exam. Well, I'm highly suspect of what they're teaching in high school anymore. So, for example, a lot of times I'll make references to things like, oh, that's very Orwellian in 1984, and students will look at me like they don't know what I'm talking about, and I'll say, did you all read 1984 in high school, which was a book that everyone should have read in high school? And students will tell me no, that they didn't. And I'll say, what did you read? And I had one student tell me that in their American literature class in high school, they read Jackie Collins novels. There's two problems with that. One is that Jackie Collins is not an American author. She's British. And two, it's trash, right? So I become a little concerned about what we're learning in high school. And so I want to point this out. And then I also want to use this as an example of what you need to do when you approach the exams in my class, which is they require critical thinking. And so what you need to do is you need to be able to find the best answer. And often all of the answer choices are correct, but there's one that's more correct than others. And you need to be able to pick that out. And so if you're only thinking about, going back to my marketing philosophies example, if you're only thinking about the temporal aspect and not able to say, well, but it goes beyond that, and people use old philosophies. People to this day still use very old ways of thinking. And I can show you lots of examples of that. They have very funny personal philosophies that don't necessarily drive with the postmodern world. We live in a postmodern world, and people still hold on to old modern or pre-modern ideas about many, many things, and those philosophies work for them. So just sort of be aware of that, and I'll give you some more examples as we go on. So we started talking about the production philosophy. We then talked about the sales philosophy, the marketing era, which goes to about 1990, where we recognize that you can study consumers from a scientific perspective, and then also now going beyond that, beyond marketing science, to recognizing that people need to be made a part of the team. We need to engage in value co-creation. And I gave you some examples of that, right? So going beyond that and moving into this relationship era. So if it is a science, if marketing is a science, what is the first thing we need to do to define what it is that is this science? So what is it that we need to do when we say marketing is a science? what's the first thing we need to do? This is for bonus points, in order to start approaching it as a science. We need to what? We need to ask questions first, okay? I think you're getting into the scientific method there. That's going to apply to all kinds of sciences. Develop techniques is what one of our extended class members has said. So develop techniques, again, I think that goes to a scientific method that's useful. What were you going to say?
I was just going to say, like, establish rules, I guess. Like,
okay.
Things that add up.
All right, we're going to have to establish rules. That again, I think, is the scientific method, right? And that's going to apply sort of across the board to all sciences. Let me be a little more specific in my question. I told you all that I started out not as, okay, so somebody says, determine exactly what it is that the study, that it is the study of. That's correct. That's the correct answer, is determine what it is we're studying. This is what we call establishing the domain of the discipline. So I think, so the answer is, that is the correct answer. Determine exactly what it is that we're going to study. I told you I started out across the parking lot as a political scientist. Political science is a social science. Marketing is a social science. They both involve people. What makes marketing different than political science, for example? What is the domain of political science as a contrast to marketing? What are you studying in political science? Politics. Yeah. You're studying politics and governments and things like that. Marketing also involves things that we might think of as being political. Some political scientists define politics as who gets what, when, where, and how. Couldn't that also apply to marketing? Don't we as marketers decide who gets what, when, where, and how? Doesn't Steve Jobs, when he was alive, determine who got an iPhone? How we got the iPhone? So what makes us different than political science or sociology, for example? Sociology is also the study of people. What is sociology the study of, as opposed to marketing? What makes sociology different than marketing? So how many of you have had a sociology course? A couple of you. So what does sociology study?
Studying the relationships with people.
Okay, you're studying relationships with people. And marketing obviously involves relationships with people. I just told you that we have the relationship here, so why aren't we just sociology? What makes marketing unique, do you think?
Because it just doesn't deal with solely people, it deals with numbers as well.
Okay. Somebody said, I think in response to my question about sociology, it's about the structure of human society. That's some of it. Sociology generally involves psychology as the study of the individual. Sociology is the study of groups. What's the smallest group we can have? Which is called in scientific sociology terms, it's called a dyad. So we have studies of dyads. Marketing largely involves the study of dyads because we're selling to people, oftentimes in a dyadic situation. So what is it that makes marketing unique and different than these others? Well, there are a couple of things. So we're going to talk about the scientific method. We're going to talk about the definitions of the domain of marketing. So marketing as a discipline is very new. I told you that. As a social activity, it's got ancient origins, but as an academic pursuit, it is fairly new. It begins at the end of the 19th and really the beginning of the 20th century in a big way. the American, or the National Association of Marketing Teachers, which was the forerunner of what we now call the American Marketing Association, in 1935 put together a definition of marketing that was: marketing is the performance of business activities that direct the flow of goods and services from producers to consumers. Now, there's a whole lot of things wrong with this definition. But if you think about where marketing started as a discipline, you can understand why they said this. But what's wrong with this definition of marketing? Would you guess?
Marketing doesn't really handle the direct flow. That's more like merchandising. I feel like marketing is more about how you convince the people how to buy the product rather than directly like figuring out how it gets the consumer.
Okay. So, marketing as a discipline starts out concerned with logistics. So as a discipline, the first marketing studies were concerning stuff that you all wouldn't think of as marketing today, but that's the foundation of marketing. It's studying how we get goods from farm to market. So the earliest marketing studies and things like the Journal of Marketing looked at things like the cheese studies. Marketing departments, big marketing departments, prestigious marketing departments, didn't actually start. Harvard claims that they had the first department of marketing. A lot of the big name academics in marketing scholarship are not at Harvard. You don't find them at Oxford or Cambridge. The biggest name in marketing theory is a guy named Shelby Hunt, who is at the university, or is at Texas Agricultural and Mechanical. A&M, Texas A&M. Is that right? See, at Texas Tech. Maybe at Texas Tech. I'm sorry, he's at Texas Tech. Right? So, does anybody think Texas Tech is Harvard? No. Texas Tech isn't even UT Austin. However, I think UT Austin has higher standards than Harvard because they 3 times rejected George Walker Bush for admission to their law school. Harvard had no problem admitting him to their MBA program. Okay? So they rejected George W. Multiple times. He got into Harvard, proving that UT has higher standards than Harvard. So these early studies in marketing involved literally how you get stuff that's perishable, like cheese in Wisconsin, to market before it spoils, right? We got a live chat going on. I'm just looking at the live chat. So it really did involve sort of the movement of goods and services. So you can see why this definition was attractive. What else might be bad? So what you're recognizing is marketing moves beyond that, right? And so what you think of as marketing today is advertising and promotion. That's what most people think of as marketing, right? That's the part of marketing that they see, that they know. You don't see the stuff that goes into logistics studies, just-in-time inventory, which is really marketing. So what else is wrong with this definition of marketing? I'll give you a hint. 2 words and they're together.
said.
Business activities?
Business activities are the two words that are problematic with this definition. Why are business activities problematic for the definition? Why are business activities problematic?
It's saying it's including all business activities, but it's just the marketing side of it, not all of it.
Okay? Because you think it's more limited than just business activities?
Yeah.
I'm not sure I agree with that. Business activities is problematic. I'm not sure that it's because it's just one aspect of the business. And I'll tell you why I disagree with what you're saying. Because marketing is, and this will come tripping off your tongue if you remember nothing else from my class, marketing is the only fully integrated function of the firm. All other aspects of the firm, accounting, finance, operations, deal with what happens inside the firm. Marketing has to work with all of those departments in order to engage our external constituents. We have to have numbers from accounting to know whether or not we are meeting our sales goals and targets. We have to understand finance because we have to know how we're going to get those goods produced that we're selling, and we have to deal with external constituents. So marketing seeks to add value across all aspects of the firm. Marketing is the only fully integrated function of the firm. You can run a business without any other business discipline knowledge except for marketing. You do not have to know anything about double entry accounting to run a business. In fact, I will tell you that most small business owners have no clue when it comes to accounting. I will tell you that most small business owners have no clue about finance in a sophisticated sense. Let me give you an example. In finance, the most critical decision a business owner makes is capital structure according to finance. If you say that to the average small business owner, and most businesses in this country, by the way, are small businesses, the vast majority of them, they have no idea what you're saying. If you say, what is your capital structure? I would be willing to bet when I say that to you, you all don't have a clue. When I say, what's your capital? Because even if you've taken your finance class, you sit here and think, I dumped that information. Why the hell are you asking me about finance stuff? And this is marketing. Why are you asking me about that? What is capital? Who wants to tell me what capital structure is? Okay. There are two ways that you can start a business in terms of getting the money for the business. What are those two ways?
Debt and equity.
You can what?
Debt and equity.
You can either have debt or you can have equity, right? That's capital finance structure. Most people don't know that, right? Most people, they know that they go to the bank and they apply for a loan. That's debt. Equity is what? Stock. Or you put your own money into it, right? If you're a DBA, you're doing business as, you don't have stock. It's just, I take my nest egg, my savings, and I decide to start my Cupid doll store, right? You don't have to know anything about that. You don't have to know anything about double entry bookkeeping to do that. I could go out and start a business today. Now, you could not start this business, but I could go out and start this business today. I need to know nothing about management because all I have to do is just control myself, and you can't really manage yourself, right? I wouldn't have any employees. I could hang out, and I literally knew a guy who did this. I could start a law practice. I have a law practice, but I could start a new one. Let's say I started a new law practice. I started a new law practice. There's a guy I knew who for years and years and years, his law practice consisted of sitting down at the shoe shine stand at the courthouse. He showed up every morning. He paid the shoe shine guy to shine his shoes, and his phone was literally the payphone that was on the wall next to the shoe shine. If you wanted to contact him, you called the payphone at the shoe shine stand, right? He didn't have to know anything about bookkeeping. He didn't have to know anything about finance, because all it was him just going down and sitting there and waiting for the drunks to walk by and say, I need a lawyer. And they do. If you dress in a suit, you can try this. You can't actually go through with the end of the experiment, but put on a suit sometime, go down to the Oklahoma County Courthouse and just walk around. People will come up to you and start, are you a lawyer? Because they've got a court date. They got a DUI. And they, he managed no one. He knew nothing about finance in terms of capital structure. He collected checks from people that walked by that needed a lawyer to appear with them in court on a moment's notice, right? So you can know nothing, but you still have to market. His marketing was dressing in a suit and talking to people as they walk by. You need a lawyer if they need. He was engaged in marketing, right? So what is it that's problematic about these two words, business activities? Marketing is about interaction than transaction. I think that is getting close. So who in YouTube land said it's about interaction than transaction? I didn't get a name. So I need you to, when you post on YouTube, at least initially post your name so that I can give you the bonus points. That's why I'm worried about this. I think that's getting to be better. It doesn't necessarily, and what I think this post recognizes is that it doesn't necessarily have to involve a business activity to be marketing. Right? Marketing is necessarily all kinds of people, all kinds of entities and organizations market, not just businesses. It's not just about business activities. You market yourself constantly, every day, whether you think about it or not, you market yourself constantly. So it's more than just business activities. In the mid-1980s, the AMA began to revise the definition, and they came up with a better definition, and it says marketing is the process of planning and executing the conception, pricing, promotion, and distribution of ideas, goods, and services to create exchanges, this is important, that satisfy individuals and organizational objectives. So now, what does this definition recognize that the first one hasn't recognized? First of all, it recognizes that individuals engage in marketing, and you do. You engage in marketing constantly, both as a consumer and as a producer. And it doesn't necessarily involve businesses. It can involve more than business transactions. It can involve interactions and organizational objectives. So now we've broadened this, and we recognize that individuals market and organizations market. It's not just businesses that market. How many of you have seen the signs on the highway? Here's one from a governmental entity. Their slogan is, "We don't accept applications, only commitments." Anybody know who came up with that one? The Marines, absolutely. That's it. Yeah, there you got bonus points for that one. And you all have got bonus points as well. Come see me after class. I'm gonna have to figure out a way to give you bonus points. Like people on my feed, I can go through and get it out. I used to give out rubber ducks to people to mark that they got bonus points, but we're also afraid of the COVID. If I sanitize the ducks, would that be okay with you all? If I promise the ducks are sanitized before? Okay. That way I got my ducks back, right? So we'd have an exchange, we'd mark it. I'd give you a duck, you'd give it back, I'd give you bonus points. So we recognize that it's individuals, organizations like the Marines engage in marketing. They advertise, they want people. The government advertises they're advertising to you to try and get you to complete the census. which if you haven't done that, you need to do that. It impacts how much money we get in Oklahoma. It also impacts how much representation we get in Oklahoma in terms of congressional delegates and things like that. So the government is engaging in marketing. Nonprofits engage in marketing. The Red Cross wants you to donate to them. They want to help people. So it's important, you know, that they engage in marketing. And even organizations that are not have any formal structure. Social groups that may not be incorporated. Market. Garden clubs, for example. There are lots of garden clubs in my hometown in Guthrie, and when you go into Guthrie, it says Guthrie, a garden town or a garden club city. There are all these gardens, they don't have any formal organization. They didn't go down and file papers with the Secretary of State, but they market. They want people to join, and why do they want them to join? So that they can exchange ideas about how to grow things and garden in Oklahoma, and some of these clubs, you know, give out yard of the week and things like that. That's marketing. So that's important. The current version, according to your text, and I'll tell you what needs to be added to this, is that marketing is the activity for creating, communicating, and delivering. So that we go back to this initial part of the definition of marketing, or the domain of marketing, which was literally transportation studies, delivering and exchanging offerings that benefit its customers, the organization, stakeholders, and society at large. So now we recognize that marketing is this set of activities. There is still one problem with this, and what I think you should know is, and what I argue is that this should be added to the beginning of that definition. Marketing is a pervasive social activity. It is a pervasive social activity. Aristotle said, now I dote on Aristotle, he is my favorite. Aristotle said, man is by nature a social creature. This is not something that we should go up in a balloon over. As much as I love Aristotle, this is not something that we should go up in a balloon over. Lots of creatures are social. But do they market? Right? Lots of creatures. I rehab small mammals. When people have a squirrel that falls out of a tree, they'll call me. I'll go pick up the squirrel. I'll rehab it. I've rehabbed a lot of squirrels. Some squirrels I've not been able to release. The last squirrel that I had that I was not able to release passed away about 8 months ago. And I was really bored. Nobody's called me in a while to rehab a squirrel. COVID struck. And I started looking, well, could I buy a squirrel? I just wanted to know if I could buy a squirrel. Had lots of them given to me. Could you buy a? Couldn't find any place that sold squirrels. There was a place in Texas that sold prairie dogs. So I went down. You can look these up on my YouTube channel. I've got lots of YouTube videos of my squirrel that recently passed away. And so I went down to Texas in the middle of COVID because I was bored to tears. Got me 2 prairie dogs. They're social creatures. They live in colonies. And by the way, maybe they do market. We generally think of only man as being marketers. But there are studies now that suggest that prairie dogs have a more complex language than any other known species. Research suggests that prairie dogs, when they alert the other members of their prairie dog clan and village, they live in clans and then they have towns that go beyond that, that they can identify not only that a predator is coming, but what kind of predator it is. They distinguish between human predator and coyote, between coyote and snake. They can communicate that. They have an enormously complex language. You can look at my prairie dogs on my YouTube channel. This is my shameless plug for my prairie dog. So when I had the squirrel, her name was Algernon, and my little vlog for her was called Adventures with Algernon. My prairie dogs, my vlog is called Today with Toby and Tyler. So it's whatever the adventures are for that day with Toby and Tyler. They have this enormously complex, and maybe they market. We generally only think of this human beings as marketing. So, bees are social creatures. Do they engage in marketing? Maybe they do. Research suggests, again, that they can, through a complex system of communication, tell other bees where pollen is, where to go, so that they can make honey. So it's, we're a social creature. It's a social activity. Marketing is a pervasive social activity. Now, what does the word pervasive mean? If you have a beaker of water and you take some food coloring and you drop a drop of food coloring into that beaker of water, in about 3 or 4 minutes, that food coloring will have spread out and pervaded that beaker of water. That's what marketing is. Marketing is a pervasive social activity. You can't escape it. Much like political science. When I used to teach political science, I would go around the room and I would have students and I would ask, why'd you take my class? I was 22 at the time I started teaching here at UCO. And most of my students were older than I was. And they would say, well, I took your class because you're not Dr. There was a Dr. Jones in the department. I thought he was very funny, but he was very old. And students didn't think he was funny. And they would say, I'm not interested in politics. It's boring. But you're not Dr. Jones, and I thought you might be more entertaining. I always found that fascinating because politics is not something like a Renoir that you can stand back and decide you just don't much care for it, or a Picasso. Everything is politics. You want to get a job, it's politics. You know how I got my first job here at UCO? Wasn't what I knew. It was because my best friend was the chief legal counsel for the university. What you know will keep you in the job. It won't get you the job. Politics gets you the job. Marketing gets you the job. Right? So these are activities that we engage in whether we want to or not, whether we think about it or not. When we're talking to our friends, you don't think about the fact that you are marketing, but you are. What makes this class different from every other class that you've taken? I used to do this as a critical thinking challenge. I used to, on the first day, I would walk in, I'd say, get into groups, establish a brand name for your group. Come up with a brand name, that's marketing, for your group, and then I want you to answer this question. How is this class different than every other class that you've taken on a college campus? And students would inevitably point out something that was pretty obvious, which was no other class have we done group work on the first day. That was what everybody came up with. No other class have we done group work on for. Okay, well, it's even more fundamental than that. I know that some of you in the online section maybe can't see this. I will attempt to make this large enough for you to see. Hopefully I can get it right in my memory. Lowercase sigma equals the square root of uppercase sigma xi minus mu squared over n, where I equals 1 to the nth. Anybody know what that is? It is a formula that's used in statistics. Good guess. That's good. What formula specifically is that's used in statistics?
Is it standard deviation?
That's it. It's the standard deviation. This is standard deviation for a population. We normally don't use this because normally what we use, populations, for example, are huge. Unless we have a very small population, we never see this. Normally, what you'll see is a statistic called the standard deviation for a sample, which is S, which stands for sample, sigma x I minus x bar, which stands for the mu over n minus 1, where I equals 1 to the n. Why do I put this up here? You didn't know anything about this when you went into your first statistics class. You had to learn it. Unlike that class, when you walked into this door, you were already experts in marketing. Because before you were born, people were marketing to you, and they will market to you until the day you die. I went this last weekend to a baby shower. I'm sort of horrified by this. When I was growing up, and this will show my age, when I was growing up, men didn't go to baby showers. It's not something men did. Now men are expected to go to baby showers. So I went to this baby shower, and people are buying all kinds of stuff and giving it gifts for the baby. So before you're even born, people are marketing to you. They're buying stuff for you. When you are born, they market to you even more. And you market back. Babies cry. They have needs and wants, and they tell their parents and their caregivers what they want. They are engaged at that very early age in marketing. And it only gets worse the more, and by the time you're 3, you have wants, which you think are needs. Mom, I need. My niece says, I don't have children. I never wanted children. Didn't have them, but I have nieces and nephews. And at 3 years old, I need cereal. No, you don't. You need vegetable. No, I need cereal. That's marketing. So you were experts at this before you walked in the door, right? So it's a pervasive social activity. You cannot escape it. Maybe if you went, I know another thing I can do for the people online. I forgot about this. It will be easier if why is this not working? There. Does that make it easier for you online? Somebody let me know if that makes it a little easier. It makes it what?
It makes it easier to read back
Makes it
here,
easier
too.
for you all back there. Yeah. So it's a pervasive social activity. You can't escape it. As long as there's other people around. Now, maybe you could go off. Maybe you can go off online as saying, yes, it does. Makes it a little easier. Perhaps you can go off to the mountain and live off the grid, and you could escape marketing then. I guess that's the one exception. You could go live on a deserted island. You can go up on the mountain, but there's very few places that you can do this. You're going to have to engage in marketing. So what is it that we need for marketing to occur? In theory, you could live off the grid and you could not engage in marketing. At that point, you would have engaged in it all of your life until you decided you were going to go off the grid, and then you could, I guess, escape marketing. So you're going to have more than one party. Marketing is at least going to involve what sociologists call dyads. A lot of marketing occurs in dyadic situations. When we talk about leadership, LMX really focuses on the fact that leaders can only have relationships in dyadic groups. So you have to have more than one party. You have to have an ability and a desire on each party's part to be satisfied for marketing to occur. This is what makes it different than sociology. You can have an interaction where neither party wants to be satisfied, and we can study that in dyadic situations, and you're not having any marketing. You can have sociology going on. I hate you. Get away from me. Right? But you're going to have an ability and a desire to be satisfied. You're going to have some form of communication. Now, it's amazing to me. I was a foreign exchange student in high school. And again, I will date myself. When I went to Germany as a foreign exchange student, there were 2 Germanys. There was not one Germany. You all don't even remember this because they had merged by the time most of you were born. There were two Germanys. There was an East Germany and a West Germany. They weren't united. And I didn't speak German at the time. I don't speak German now either, really. It was not a language that I took to easily. But it's amazing how you can communicate. I was 16 at the time, and that was the legal age to drink beer. And I learned how to communicate, I need beer, very quickly. Even though I didn't speak German. You can point, you know. Then show them your money. And it's amazing how you can communicate. So communication doesn't have to be all that sophisticated, but you have to have some communication. And you have to have something to exchange. So sociologists, this is again how it differs, marketing differs as a discipline from maybe sociology. Sociologists can study behavior in groups where there's nothing really exchanged, maybe. Although maybe I would argue that there is, because as a marketer, I believe you should be able to explain the world from the vantage of your perspective. But sociologists would tell you, for example, they can study things like how many of you have been to an NBA Thunder game? There's nothing like going to an NBA. Well, I've been to a Mavericks game. It's very boring compared to a Thunder game. But there is stuff that sociologists can, there's no exchange going on between a lot of the people in that room, but there is a mob psychology in that. It's one of the reasons why the arena is, like, I think to this day, the Thunder has the loudest, well, nobody's terribly loud anymore because nobody's playing to live crowds, but we had the loudest arena in the NBA. I mean, Thunder fans are very committed to this, right? So you have to have something to exchange. So exchange, maybe one of the things that's really central to establishing marketing as a discipline and a domain, distinct from and separate from things like political science and sociology. What do I mean by that? Well, in political science, I studied political science for a long time. Political science, the government does exchange things with you, and you engage in marketing with the government, but the government also, unlike marketing, has the ability to impose its will one way where there is no exchange. The government is the only legitimate entity that can say, you shall do this, and they give you nothing for it. Right? Now, a lot of people say, well, that's taxes. No, you get a lot for your taxes, really, more than you think. How did you get here today? Did you pay for that road? Well, if you took the turnpike, maybe you paid for part of it, but the government does exchange things with you, taxes for roads and services and stuff like that. But it can also do things where it doesn't give you anything. Like say, you shall not, thou shall not. And they're not exchanging with you. Marketing has to have some exchange. Right? So this may be central for it to occur. Any questions about marketing theory before I go into marketing strategy? All right. So let's talk a little bit about marketing strategies. Now, the textbooks generally talk about large organizations like Boeing and General Motors and Ford, and they do case studies in your textbook on things even smaller, but still a very large organization like Ben and Jerry's, and on Microsoft or YouTube or Google or things like that. And I don't think that from your perspective, these are terribly helpful. So when we talk about strategies, the textbook gives you examples of goals and things like that for big corporations. But again, because you engage in marketing, I want to make this more relevant to you. So I want you all to think about, your goals. So let's start out with, what is a goal? What is a goal?
Something you aim to accomplish.
Something you aim to accomplish. Right, that's a goal. All right. Now, what should we do if we want to accomplish our goals?
Take certain steps towards them.
Okay, before we start taking certain steps, should we probably do? If you want to be successful at your goals, what do you want to do?
Make sure exactly what your goal is.
Okay, we'll talk about that some more, but before that, what do you want to do?
Make sure it's achievable.
Make sure it's achievable. Okay, okay,
Identify the goal.
identify the goal.
Have a need.
Let's try this. You all have probably heard of one of the most, law-like generalizations that we have in marketing is that, for example, if you go to the grocery store, you should do what? Have a list, which means you should have written it down. If you want to achieve your goals, write it down. Now, that's what a marketing plan is for a company. They write their goals down. So if you want to be successful, you should write your goals down. If you think about this, I a lot of times I think I'll remember stuff. I'm a smart person. I'll remember what I need at the grocery store. And inevitably, if I don't write the list down, what happens? I buy stuff that I don't need, and I inevitably get out of the parking lot and I have to go back to get stuff that I do need. So make a list, write it down for your goals. That's going to be really important. Write it down. Make sure that you've got your goals, in front of you. People who write their goals down are more successful. Something about if you commit it to writing, you're more likely to do it. It makes it more real. And it also helps you focus and keep on track. So write the goals down. So let's talk about what a goal is. It's something that you want to accomplish, something that a business wants to accomplish. What is a good goal? Now, I want you to think about this from two perspectives. First of all, good can have a meaning in terms of the ability to accomplish the goal, which is the more mundane aspect of what we mean by good. But good can also have a subjective, qualitative aspect to the goal. And what do I mean by that? Well, I just told you you should write your goals down if you want to achieve them. But what's a worthy goal? We should also think about that. What is a worthy goal? Is it possible, and you need to give me an example to get bonus points for this, is it possible to pursue an irrational goal from a rational perspective?
Like space flight, I mean, like going to the moon.
You think that was irrational?
At some point it was.
At some point that was irrational? I don't know. They did it, didn't they? We managed to put a man on the moon. Was it rational? I don't know. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was not a rational goal. Maybe we spent way too much money on something that really didn't matter. Maybe. I don't know. Why did we go to the moon, by the way? Why did we go to the moon? The Russians, yeah. We wanted to beat, they weren't the Russians. They were, they were the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. So it was more than just Russia at that point in time. We wanted to beat the Russians. The Russians beat us into space. They put the first person into orbit, and that seemed to be a very difficult goal. And maybe it was irrational. Why would we spend all of this money on that? What is out there that we could possibly use? Well, a lot of stuff turns out to be pretty good. from our space exploration. This device, you might, now I have a friend who's a computer programmer who argues that, I argue that this device right here is directly related to the space program, that computing is related to the space program in that computers before space flight were huge. Now, it depends on how you define computing. Lots of people will say, for example, that Blaise Pascal came up with one of the first computers. It was a mechanical device that could add slide rules. You've never seen a slide rule. I'll bring in a maybe example if I can remember of a slide rule. That is technically a computer. I have a commercial pilot's license and we use slide rules. They're called flight computers in flight. Now they have electronic versions of those now, but literally space flight led to us being able to shrink technology down. Before the space program, computers took up, and even during the space program, computers took up really literally rooms this size to do a very, very small amount of computational data. Once we decided we wanted to put people in space, we had to shrink that size down a lot in order to get it on board the space vehicles, right? So literally, I think that the space program is probably 95% responsible for this device that you hold in your hands today. Because we had to learn how to start making things really small and how to do big computations on that small space. So I'm not sure that was completely irrational. What would be a more irrational goal? Yeah.
Would it be more like, I have the goal that everyone will love me? You can't control everyone else. Would it be something like that?
Okay, yeah, that could be a completely irrational and maybe not achievable goal, right? Not everybody's going to love you. In fact, when I was married, my wife loved the Golden Girls. This is a very old show you all have probably not seen, unless you watch Lifetime. It runs on reruns on Lifetime, I think. There's Rose is one of the characters in the Golden Girls, and there's one of these people at work that doesn't like her, and literally she does everything she can to get him to like her because everybody likes her. I mean, she's the nice one. That's the part she plays on the Golden Girls. Dorothy is the smart one. Blanche is the sexy one, and Rose is the nice one. And she runs across somebody who doesn't like her, and as hard as she tries, he just hates her. Like she gave him a gift, and she gave him a gift of like a cashmere sweater. He has a horrible allergic reaction to cashmere. You know, I mean, everything she does is just wrong. He's not going to like her. So yeah, that's a goal that's not at all rational. The classic example of this, of course, is one of the worst episodes in history. The elimination of an entire race of people is an irrational goal. But they did it in Nazi Germany, and they pursued it in a very rational, comprehensive way. If you are going to kill lots of people, and that is an extremely irrational goal, the mass execution of large numbers of people is an irrational goal. There's no good reason to do it. But if you're going to do it, they did it in a very rational way. It's a very dark example. But so we can pursue irrational goals from very rational perspectives. So the reason I point this out to you is because what we want when we think about goals, both as companies and as individuals, is we want our goals to be good from two perspectives. We want our goals to not only be achievable in a good sense that we can achieve them, but also we want them probably to be worthy goals, right? So now what is a worthy goal? What do you all think is worthy? Somebody give me one of your goals.
Graduate college.
Okay, to graduate college. Is that a good goal?
Yeah,
You hope?
I hope so.
Okay. I would say it's a worthy goal, but how do we make it an even better goal? I think that a priori, we know that people who graduate from college make more money. They are better able to support their families, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So hopefully you're still streaming. My computer's about to go dead. And I've only got a few minutes left. So environmental sustainability, as somebody said, that's a goal. I think that's a worthy goal, right? Now, in order to get that goal accomplished, we're gonna have to dig deeper into what environmental sustainability means. For your example, which is the one that every student gives me, and that's a great example, I'm gonna say that that's a pretty good goal, but we gotta make it a lot better. So when you say I wanna graduate, this morning, one of my students in class said, to graduate. And I was like, that's not at all a good goal, to graduate. I think she thought I knew what she meant, but I don't know that I knew what she meant because now when I went to school as a young person, there was no kindergarten graduation. I now have nieces and nephews and they've gone through kindergarten graduation and now there's a 6th grade graduation, you know, like, I mean, literally, seriously, people were gonna graduate from them. It's 2 hours a day or 3 hours a day. I guess they do have all day kindergarten now, but you know, like kindergarten is you didn't bite anybody and you graduate, right? And now they have 6th grade graduation. I said, you know, I've never heard of 8th grade graduation, and half of my class this morning held up their hands and said, we had an 8th grade graduation. And I'm like, seriously? 8th grade graduation. When I went to school, there was one graduate, like in K-12, there was one, it was called high school graduation. There wasn't kindergarten graduation and 6th grade graduation and 8th grade graduation. There was just graduation, yeah.
At my school, we did a 5th grade graduation and it was a crossing the bridge over into high school.
A 5th grade?
Or
So
into middle
6th
school.
in
Yeah.
middle school.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, all right. When I went to school, K through 6 was in one, that was called elementary. Middle school was 7th or junior high, 7th and 8th, and then 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th was high school. So, you know, graduate, well, you're talking about high school graduation, college graduation. So I don't even think college graduation is necessarily a good goal. Like we're gonna sit there, we're gonna open up the course catalog and start throwing darts at degree programs to, okay, underwater basket weaving. Yep, that's what it hit. Let's do that. No, let's not do that, right? So let's make it a better goal. I want to graduate with a degree in professional sales. There we go. That's a good goal. My shameless plug for professional sales, right? I want to graduate with a degree in professional sales. Now, how can we make that even better? Well, let's add a temporal aspect to that goal. Now, historically, my mother thought I was a slacker because I graduated from college in 4 years, and we call it a 4-year degree, and nobody graduates in 4 years anymore. How long does it take the average person from start to finish to graduate? It's about 5.5 years is the average to graduate from college. My mother graduated in 3 years. She thought I was a slacker because I took 4 whole years to graduate. Now, why could I do that, and why is it not likely that you will be able to do that? Well, when I went to UCO, well, I started out at OU, and then when I came to UCO, it was $1,000 a semester for tuition for 18 hours, right? It's not $1,000 anymore for a semester. My parents could afford to write, I didn't work. They could afford to write the check for that. Most of you have to work. So, you know, it's hard to take 18 hours. Now you can still do it. There are still people who are very committed and they get their degree done in 4 years, but generally what they have to do is they take 15 hours and then they have to take summer school. I didn't take summer school. That's why my mother thought I was a real layabout and a wastrel, because I was like, I'm not going in summer. It's hot. Crazy. No. Give up my freedom? No way. So there's a